Hey everyone, I hope you had a great day and great week since I last did the Pheekcast number 2. Today is number 3, and I decided to do things a little bit differently. I just decided to do a conversation with my buddy Patrick Haggard, also known as Stereo Image, that's gonna do a release on my label, and I thought it would be a good thing to talk about music production, some techniques that he used for his album, and nerd out together, because we do that usually without any camera filming. So I thought it would be nice to maybe share a little bit of how we do it and what we talk about. And you'll see that we both love dub techno and dub in general, so that will be a bit of the topic of today, as well as some other things that we love about music production, such as plugin use and talking especially about reverbs. You know how much I love reverbs. So have a listen. Patrick, thanks for joining me this week. I'm not going to talk. I know I just told you that, but it's for people listening to the podcast. I'm not going to talk for an hour this week. It's tiring, and I'm not sure if it's relevant. So you and I are going to have a talk. We're going to discuss. We've been collaborators for years, and we work together on different things. And you're someone I enjoy discussing music and life and anything in between. So I thought I would pick your brain. And
awesome. Bring it on. Thanks for having me on the show, man.
You're welcome. I like that you say show. It's like, it sounds great.
It is. It's what it is, isn't it?
Yeah, my show.
It just got real.
It just got real. It needed like 2 first podcasts as preparation, and now we are officially on. So this week I wanted to talk about creativity, because that's what we do. Last week we were talking about the importance of finding quality sounds. I kind of want to follow up on that. And first off, people don't know this already, but you are going to release an album on my label in a bit more than a month now. And so do you want to...
Actually, a month today.
Yes, that's true.
So
do you want to talk about it?
To this, it'll be less than a month.
Yes, yes. And we will have like a little snippet, the preview of your album during the podcast. I would like to know if you could talk about your creative process of that album. It's very nice.
Yeah, sure. So I it's kind of a dialogue I have with you, man.
Yes.
Because like you sent me the Sensibility album, and I was like, oh, it's cool. I like that.
Oh, you mean like a conversation, a dialogue in terms of music?
Yeah. It's kind of just like a response to like me listening to that. Like as soon as I heard that, I was like, oh yeah, dope. I want to try and do that. and it ended up, it doesn't sound at all like Sensibility, but like it ended up having its own flavor. But like it's kind of like, I don't know, it's a dialogue I have with you, and it's fun because I'm kind of like trying to have other people influence this album as much as possible. So I didn't title any of the album tracks or the name of the album. It was actually an old friend of mine from elementary school that's been like listening to my music for like a decade now, and I just like, I sent him the album and I was like, hey, I don't have any titles, do you want a title? and like I just told myself like, whatever it's gonna be is gonna be. And it was like a really cool experiment, because just giving up that creative freedom to someone and having them listen to what you did and interpret it, see what their interpretation was, you know. And he gave it back, and I was like, oh, it was awesome. There's a concept and everything. And I was like, oh, this is amazing. This was a great idea.
I love that you are open. You know,
I could come up with like a lot of explanation, but I will sum it up by you're open. That's how it sounds. You're open to possibilities. And, like when working on an album, you don't wake up one morning and say, I'm going to make an album, right? Do you see where you were in control and when you were not in control of your creative flow?
I would say for this project, I did wake up and say, I'm gonna make an album.
But it was not made that day. That's what I mean.
No, it didn't happen in one day. It was a pretty consistent time span. It happened pretty quickly, and it was like about like a track a day. Like, I don't know, I'm gonna say 80% of what the track is. So I had a workflow. So first I create, and that's kind of what I do with most of my projects, is like I'll create the workflow and a vague description of the kind of like mood and sound genre I'm going for. And then but the workflow is usually fairly strict. And the mood and genre and all that I can experiment with a little bit more. And then once I have that workflow, then I get cracking. And for this one, it was like I set myself on about, it was three synths, VSTs, and a handful of plugin effects that I wanted to use, and just like techniques of how I was going to set it up. So most of the tracks were just like one, I don't know if you guys are into Ableton, it was all on one scene. So all the different layers were all just on one clip. And on that clip was just like tons of modulation that was asynchronous. And so like it never really repeated exactly the same. And then once I got all the tracks done in that fashion, so it's basically just like an endless loop, then I sent it out into my my mixer. Right there. And I like just performed it dub style, just doing volumes in and out, and have some effects on there, and just like playing with effects on the fly, and creating the arrangement through performing it live, tactile. And that, I mean, that part of it I just did in about like a week, just doing all the arrangements, and that was it. And yeah, it was like a tight enough workflow that it all kind of happened really quickly and really easily. It was kind of the easiest album I've ever made, but I really feel like it's like the most intricate in some ways.
Easy is, I think, is you're at your place when it's easy.
Yeah,
because it's effortless. It's just, it seems to be more authentic that way. Would you think so?
Yeah, 100%. I don't think if anybody else tried to make this album, they would have thought it was easy.
That's the thing. Sometimes, like, the easier it is, the people think it's actually really complicated. And sometimes the stuff that looks super easy is extremely complicated.
It's so weird like that.
But it's true.
Yeah.
It's just like, I remember there was this song by Johnny D about, I don't know, like 15 years ago, when it was kind of like a very good techno track, and everyone was kind of bitching and saying like, oh, this is easy to do. And I was just like, no, this is really, really complicated, actually. And your album, when I heard it, it's like, I can tell that there's like a flow and a simplicity into it, but there's a thought process in developing a concept, and what's the motor of the concept of the album, and that's where it sounds complicated in a way.
Yeah, I don't know. It's funny with projects, because some projects are that I'm sure everyone has this shared experience, but some projects I'll do, and like it was so hard to do, but it turned out great. And then And then some albums just like feel really easy to do, and they also turn out great. And the difficulty you have in the process doesn't actually dictate whether or not the end result is going to be good.
And I can say, if you remember, the first time we worked on an EP together,
Yeah.
oh my God, it was
Yeah, it
so
was so hard.
complex. It was so complex.
Yeah, it's that's funny too. I found that a lot with collaborations with people. And sometimes I'll have a really hard time collaborating with someone, and you just kind of keep at it with pauses in between.
Mhm.
And then at some point it just like clicks, and you're like, oh, this is the way we're supposed to work together, and then it just blows up. So yeah, I don't know. This is creativity is so funny that way. It's like,
That's the
yeah.
thing that I like about music and video and dance or anything that is art related, is if like we all try to follow a technique, a way of someone else, and eventually you find your own way. And through your own way, then you truly can express yourself, and you find your own techniques. And I find that in that album, what was beautiful to see is, because I've been following music for years now, I felt like you developed your own techniques. And maybe it was a chain of effect, or maybe it was a way you were sidechaining some stuff, or maybe a way you were sending your music to ascend, like a reverb or delay. But was there a technique that was almost recurrent on all the tracks that you would say that was there?
Yeah.
Do you want to share like your recipe?
I kind of stumbled on this thing where, like I said, if I figure out the workflow, and the workflow is super strict, then there's a cohesion to a piece of work, an album, an EP, or whatever, that's really noticeable. So this one, I'm trying to think if there's anything fancy I did on this. Well, actually, yeah, probably like the convolution reverb stuff. There was a lot of just the way I use them. There was a lot of me using a convolution reverb and trying to get like the weirdest convolutions in it that would just change the tone and the style and the texture of it without adding reverb, in a sense, just giving it an effect. And yeah, and then after that, it would still sound dry because of the convolution that I chose, and then adding other reverbs on top of that. I'm kind of playing with that kind of thing. The small amount of percussion in this album does a lot of that, and I thought that was like really fun to play with.
So is there some kind of bank of impulse response that you found for that, or did you make your own?
Man, they're just like the stock ones. Just like little secret, like go into the Ableton convolution, and then like under experimental, there's just amazing ones.
Yeah, they're good. They're good. There's just so many out there as well.
Yeah.
I like yeah, go ahead.
I've done other projects where I've thrown in some custom made convolutions and stuff like that, but I think that's part of what made this project so easy, is like I didn't do that much of a deep dive, so that I wouldn't lose the flow of creating it. Because sometimes it's really easy to get bogged down with going into it that deep and getting that granular, and then you're like, finally I made the perfect convolution, and then you're like, where was this track going?
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, I also pulled from a lot of sound design stuff I had done previously. I think that's really important too, right? Is like doing a lot of the sound design and setting things up ahead of time so that when you're
Yeah.
in the space to just write, you can just write. Actually, one of the things that's in a lot of the tracks is recordings I took from your Folk Tech Matter. Dude, I love that
Nice.
thing.
That is great.
It's so sick. And actually I recorded it, so much of it, that I made an Ableton rack. I can share it with you if you want. So like I have like as many of the different sounds as I could make, all in different Ableton racks. And I can like sequence it in Ableton and it sounds like it's coming straight out of the machine.
Nice.
So that gives me the kind of like ability to like have the control over it, because it's kind of not super easy to control, but still like capture that essence and that tone and character. Because man, that thing's got character.
It's like the thing that seduced me the first time I heard it was the noise. Just like the it's noise floor that it has is beautiful, and sometimes I use that noise as a impulse response. I just drop it in the convolution.
Cool.
There's this guy Gabor. I think he's from Hungary. I don't know, Hungary, and he makes super good Maximus P patches, and he also makes impulse responses and sound design. And he has made a bank of noise, just noise from different sources, tapes, machines, and he sells them as impulse response. And I got the idea from him. Then I got the fault deck in the convolution, but I find that just dropping it and leaving it vanilla is a bit boring. So usually what I like to do is to have an envelope follower on the wet dry, so that
nice.
Yeah, so that the wet dry follows the incoming signal, which gives more the impression that the sound and the noise are glued together. If it's just wet, it's kind of static and engulfed. I don't know how to explain, but it becomes a bit boring. I find it lacks vitality and energy. And so with this envelope follower, it's beautiful.
That's a cool trick. Do you put just like a fat noise sample, or do you put like a noise sample that then decays, like a reverb tail?
There's no like, I mean, I cannot tell you I do it this way, because each project I would do it a little bit different. Yeah, I would do it a little bit differently. But I usually cut the low end under 200 and kind of focus on the mids and the highs. But if I hear the full tech noise, I know I'm not doing it right. Yeah, it has to be kind of as a soft blanket in the background. That's kind of how I like to have it. So that it just you want the sound to have like this other layer. There's a plugin called Texture. I forgot who made it, but
Devious Machines.
I think it's Devious Machine.
As I use that one a lot in the album.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's very good.
I love it.
Yeah, it's very good. So I got the idea from the envelope follower from that.
Nice.
Because any synth that sounds too digital, you just put texture over it, and then you put like a pink noise, a white noise, and then it kind of just follows and automatically becomes, it feels analog all of a sudden. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, totally. I use that thing so much.
But I mean, I resisted buying it for a very long time, because what it does, it can be done very easily in Ableton. With you can make your own rack, but eventually they updated it where you could, because I wrote to them and I said I would buy this, but I cannot load my own stuff and it's pointless. And I guess we were maybe a bunch that told them that, because they eventually updated that you can load your own stuff. and it was interesting after that to be using it. And it's just faster than building your own. Jason would make like a machine that does that, but I don't have the patience to do that.
Yeah, you totally would.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel the same way with some plugins too, where I'm like, oh man, I could totally just do this. But then it's a question of how much time am I saving? And is it possible to make just one preset of it that I can pull into sessions? And if it's not that simple and it is saving me time and the interface inspires me, then like, and it's not too expensive.
Yeah.
Then it's like, okay, let's go get it. Go on, whatever.
I think whenever you can have a plugin that does something that saves you time, it's one thing, but there's also the fact that you're sometimes access presets that it comes with, and then like there's a lot of hate about presets. And in the previous episode, I was talking about how presets are actually educational, because they see you do this way and you're like, oh, okay, cool, and then you emulate that with other techniques, and it's you just upgraded yourself, like you just learned something. Is there a plugin you're sharing a few plugins you've used? Is there a one that you maybe discovered while working on this, or did you just went for everything that you had practice and learn in the last year or so?
I got Timeless, the Fab Filter delay,
Yeah.
when I started doing this. So that was a pretty big deep dive on that delay. And that's kind of the context in which I would use that delay for most things. I tend to not reach for it when I'm doing like mix downs or anything like that. I already have my go-to delays for all that kind of like technical needing to do stuff in the mix.
Yeah.
But that's a really good delay for just getting crazy and sound designy with, because of the way there's all that modulation capability, and it handles the modulation really well too. It's not all these plugins that sound great when you start modulating all the parameters.
No, especially when you modulate like the time, it just can make like these chirping feedback noises, and the Timeless as a good one. There's one that came out, a delay from Audio Damage. I forgot the name. I'm gonna check this. Do you know?
I'll get
Audio
my
Damage?
credit card ready.
Do you know Audio Damage?
Yeah, I like those guys a lot.
Yeah, it's good what they do. So the delay that I'm talking about is called Other Desert Cities.
Oh, yes. Heard about it. Haven't tried it.
It's great.
What's good about it? What do you like about it?
I don't know. It's just I remember when I had the ad about Timeless, and you were the first person I went to, and I said, check out Timeless. It just came out. Timeless 3 is out. And you were like, oh shoot, I just want a delay, so this is perfect. And I bought it and I played with it. I enjoyed it. The only thing that I don't like is the interface. I find it to be frustrating. It doesn't give me right away the sound that I'm like, okay, you're supposed to be doing that. Why aren't you doing that? And that really puts me like in a place where I don't like to use it for that. But
yeah, it's not fast.
It's not fast, and yeah. I need results quickly, because you know how I work. I work fast, and I don't have time for 20 minutes of noodling around. So the thing that I like about the plugins from Audio Damage is it's fast, it's clean, it's easy to control. You don't get lost in multiple pages and quirkiness of like details. It's pretty straightforward. and the results sounding beautiful. First time I heard someone use it was Omri Cohen, and he was using it on a live stream on YouTube, and I heard it, I was just like, okay, the granular part of it is beautiful. Yeah, and it's not so expensive. I got it on discount, and I end up using that one the most with the Valhalla delay as well.
Nice.
And
Yeah, I'm gonna put that on my to get.
sorry, the Valhalla delay is the funny story about Valhalla delay is that I bought it because I was like, I don't need another delay. I'm gonna buy it. I don't know why I'm buying it, but it might be useful at some point. I like to have multiple units, and it's probably the one I use the most, and it's the one that I thought I would use less.
Oh
It's
yeah, okay, that's fun.
yeah,
I
yeah.
love that when plugins surprise you like that.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Like Valhalla is whenever I feel like I maybe done and everything with it, I just discovered one trick, and I'm like, oh shit, there's this that. It's great. Have you played with their plugins for your album?
I in this album, no. No, I don't think I used any of them. I only have some of their free ones, and I keep meaning to get more of them because they're just like unanimously raved about.
That's
Yeah, everybody loves the Valhalla stuff.
that's good.
With Gaz, it sounds awesome. Yeah, I don't know. Black Friday is coming up. We'll see.
Yeah, that's
Cyber
scary.
Monday.
I wanted to ask you about your sources because your album's synth, uh, in the low end, people don't know, but your album is dub techno, of course, and dub techno, the importance of the synths is super crucial. Although more and more, some dub techno that I like, people are now exploring different kind of synths, and I was curious if you could tell us about the synths that you've been using on that album.
Sure. Actually, we spoke about this when we did the Mutech thing.
Yeah.
And my main synth was Cypher by F Expansion. That was usually the synth that I started every track on. So
Wow,
everything
nice.
really came out of that. And the low end, this was a particular thing that I did on a lot of the tracks when you were trying to talk about a stylistic technique. The low end was mostly just using Shaperbox and using the time module to like pitch stuff down. It was that simple. And like, man, I would just play with that thing and like shifting things because it shifts it at different times, but it can also pitch it down. And then so I would get a melody going with Cypher, which has so many parameters being modulated all the time and is moving around. So then you have that thing that's moving around, but then the bass line is basically like a pitch down version that's also playing with like the chopping and timing of it. So it's all within the same key if there was a key. And it's in relation to that thing. And so as the Cypher synth is like changing or growing or coming down or whatever, so is the bass line following it. And it just made like really, like I like those kind of bass lines that are hard to tell what they even are, you know, where it's not a specific melody that you can like sing, but it's just filling up that space in a really clean way, and you're like, what are you can't even like totally distinguish it from all the other elements. I like doing that a lot too, as like blending elements. I find music, electronic music can be really stale when I can hear all the individual layers so perfectly, where it's like, okay, there's a 909, okay, there's the 303, okay, there's this synth. there's the Juno, and you're like, okay, that's cool, but like I like blending sounds together where you don't even know where one starts, one is starting, where it's ending, or like you're not even sure if that bass line is its own thing or if it's part of another thing, without it being just like a muddy mess either. So that's a really intricate balance too, right? It's like creating like clarity in the fidelity in the mix down, but kind of blurring the lines between the different layers.
I love that. It kind of, I was listening to you, and I feel like your description and the way you explain how you like those elements is exactly how I want to make music in general, where I get really bored when I'm like, I see Ableton blocks, like, okay, now the bass line's coming, and then the kick is coming, and then the claps are coming. I want to feel like sounds are coming in, and I didn't know where it came from, exactly like you said. And I find like one of the best tool to do that is Shaperbox, like you said. There's one thing for creating baseline. Now that you said that the picture is super good. I don't remember. It's a time factor. It's called. I don't know. Forgot something like that.
Yeah, if you get it alone, it's called time factor.
Yeah. So there's another trick that is super cool, which is you can make bass lines with the filter part, where you filter really, really low and then crank the resonance. It makes a beautiful lush oscillation. It's just like super nice. And then this new module that appeared in Shaperbox, which is the noise. Have you tried it?
I haven't gotten the time to do the update yet. Yeah, I can't wait.
It's as if they made the perfect environment to create dub. You can have like a 1-bar loop. You just play it in Shaperbox, and then if you add all the stuff and do your modulation properly, you can just let it go. It's going to be generative music. It's going to be generative dub.
Yeah, it's amazing. That thing has so many applicable uses.
Yes.
Like,
yes.
I mean, I'll use it in crazy sound design as much as I'll actually end up when I'm sitting down and doing a mix down. Like, it gets me out of sticky situations in a mix as well.
Yeah, exactly.
It's amazing. It's so useful. Have you been making kind of bass lines? Like, I as you were kind of describing that, in my head, I'm picturing you use the noise module first, and then you start going into like the filter and cranking the resonance and doing bass lines like that. Have you tried that kind of thing?
It's difficult to say. I just drop all the modules and then I change the order, and I usually end up adding an external LFO and then control parameters of the Shaperbox that are not that you can't modulate inside. So I modulate with an external LFO that is the source for all things. So I'm playing with the wet dry, for instance, and certain elements.
So I didn't even like that never even crossed my mind, because there's so much modulation in it that I never even thought, oh yeah, I should modulate more.
Well, the wet dry, for one thing, I find that to be very important to modulate, especially with an envelope follower, for instance. So, like for a pad, like the envelope, you control the envelope, and then you can just add more noise or just play with, drum and bass style, where just the filter opens up and then closes when the pad ends or something like that. So and plus with the internal stuff, and like you said, it becomes, sometimes you have to be careful not to be too much. I don't want to be like, I don't know, Richard Devine, where it's like a cyborg on LSD and you don't understand what's going on, but it's nice, but you don't understand.
Yeah, that guy, yeah, he's amazing. And all his stuff is like, what is happening? It's like, it's so intense.
I love it. I mean, he's like at the other end of the spectrum of the, Stockhausen is someone that was obsessed with modulation and wanted everything to be always changing and modulation.
Mm.
And I don't know where I saw that, but apparently I don't know if he wrote a letter or he made an article in a newspaper, but when the first album of Plastic Man came out in the early 90s, he destroyed it. Like he just was like, this is shit. It's nothing's happening. How can this be nice for people? Like he was mad because like there was not enough modulation. So Richard Devine would be his best friend because he's at the other end of the spectrum. And then the other end, you have like the drones that are just super lazy whales. And I find that you and I are trying to find our way right in the middle of that.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, because you have to add movement, but you also need something concrete to anchor you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, as much as you and I are trying to avoid repetition, it's like an intrinsic part of every electronic music genre.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
So there's there's something to be said for respecting repetition
Mm.
and finding that balance between, oh, I'm stuck in a loop and something hypnotic. I don't know. I tend, well, also because we both come from a techno background too.
Yeah.
Which is like extra embracing of repetition.
Wait. We're both coming from hip hop background,
Okay.
right?
I mean, yeah, if you want to go way back.
It is an influence. It is an influence, right?
Yeah. In the early 2000s, man, that's all I listened to.
Yeah, I mean, the hip hop, the aesthetic of hip hop, is very close to techno in a way. And when you make the shift from hip hop to techno, it's totally relevant. And I find that people that come to techno without that background are sometimes lacking the aesthetic part. Their music is soft and a bit dry. Sorry, I interrupted you, but I wanted to point out that we come from hip hop. But what were you saying? I'm sorry. I just went on tangent.
No, I mean, I like that. I like that point of view. I definitely, I feel like I can, I don't know, when I'm looking for like mixing tutorials or something like that, I never shy away from guys that mix hip hop because it's like, it's still electronic music to me.
Of course.
And I mean, I've also listened to a lot of bass music that like, man, so easily will switch up from one genre into another, and then all of a sudden you're like into hip hop tracks, and like there's so much of that influence, especially there. But yeah, I don't know. I think we were talking about repetition. Okay, the thing about like the techno thing, and that works with hip hop too because it's so kind of yeah, it's loopy. Is like we're usually looking for like some sort of like hypnosis, right? There's something about those four on the floor genres that really like induce like an entrancing hypnosis through repetition.
Yeah.
And which I find is really different from, let's say, drum and bass, breakbeats, dubstep, like what, and that kind of scene. There's a lot of similarities between, but like that's what I find is really different. As in where those genres, a lot of the time, obviously there's going to be subgenres that totally don't work with what I'm trying to say. But like I find a lot of the time it's kind of like trying to hype you up and be in your face and do these types of things that are trying to grab your attention instead of trying to put you in a state of repetitious hypnosis. You know, so it's like there's like a certain amount of grabbing your attention with like, oh, we took the kick drum out, oh, then we brought it back, and like that's cool, but like too much of it, and then it ends up being like really choppy and you don't get that hypnosis.
I totally agree. And I find that sometimes if a song is filled with gimmicks and tricks, first of all, it doesn't age well. Yeah. Because there will always be someone that does it more than you or better than you. So you will eventually look and sound gimmicky. And second of all, I find that if you have to do a lot of bells and whistles and fireworks, it's because your song has nothing to say.
Yeah.
But I mean, maybe that will be triggering for some people to say that, but that's kind of my interpretation. Sometimes I do mixing for clients and I'm like, there's nothing. It's hollow. There's absolutely nothing. And there's all these, which is like, okay, cool. But the substance, man, we need substance. We need something that when I finish a song, it's stuck in my head. And that I know the job has been done in a way where it will leave an imprint in people's mind. And totally. what you say goes perfectly along with that, where not trying to push it sometimes is more powerful than trying to impress.
Yeah, I'm making a lot of techno now, and I'm trying to stay away from doing these really big breakdowns and buildups.
Good. I'm happy to hear that.
It's like if the track is good enough, it's like just taking away the kick drum and bringing it back. It's so effective. It's like that already is like, it's big enough, and like and you can add other little things to accentuate those little moments, but like, yeah, it's just kind of annoying because I mean, I'm sure so many DJs just like kind of like skip that breakdown part because it's just like the audience in a set, right? Because the audience wants to dance. Like at some point you can't just continuously stop the beat, so it can be in some floaty pads and then some risers and
well let's face it, those big breakdowns and big risers are mostly popular with DJs that love to make a show with their hands, because they just leave the track and it's on and they don't have to do much. It's true. Look at Jeff Mills. Jeff Mills is not and never does that.
Yeah,
he's working his ass off and just making shit happen. And I mean, like you said, I find that like some of the best songs I've heard, or my favorite, I won't say best because best is arbitrary, it doesn't mean anything, but my favorites at the moment are, I'm listening to some DJ sets and there's this track and it's the same pattern for 7 minutes. I ripped it from YouTube because I wanted to study the track, and I was like, it's literally the same loop all the time, but just little changes here and there, and you can't get enough of it. It never gets boring because that's timeless. Yeah, I know, right?
This is so like, hard to make a loop you want to listen to 7 minutes later.
Well, there's kind of recipe in how you want to drop certain sound. You have your repetition over 1 bar, you have some repetition over 2 bar, you have some repetition over 4 bar, and then you have like an element happening every 2 bar, every 4 bar. And if you just juggle with all these elements, you easily get your 8 minutes, and there's always something happening and you don't have to force it.
Do you have like a template or something you go to for arranging when you do more techno stuff? Because the process is going to be so different from like ambient and dub to like just straight techno. You know what I mean? Like it's such a different approach, like, because it's more functional. It's like, okay, I'm not just expressing myself. It's like it also has to function in a certain context. So like, do you find I don't know, yeah, do you have a template or something? Or
I had some and I wanted to share them on my blog at some point, and I decided not to. But because I produced so much music, eventually the templates, I knew them by heart, and I didn't really need them after that. But right now, the thing that I like the most is to make a song from one clip, one MIDI clip.
Mm.
And that's fun because you,
Okay, explain.
so you take one clip and then you make one loop and then you do duplicate. And then you change a few things, and then you go from, you do a duplicate again, and then you go from 1 to 2 to 4. And then you adjust a few things, and then you duplicate it and it becomes 8. And then you change a few things, and then you duplicate it becomes 16. And then you change a few things and you duplicate and it becomes 32. And then this one clip becomes an entire track.
That is really clever. So is that what you did on the, you sent me like podcast, I don't know where that went. You sent me like an ambient thing you did for a podcast.
That was modular stuff.
Yeah, is that kind of similar to what you did? Because that, I don't know, when you describe that, I kind of feel like that's what I was hearing, because I was hearing like a simple melody just like slowly evolve into something bigger. Actually, no, this is probably a really different technique, but
No, you're right. It's basically the technique that I call the brain, which is I will have this core, the core or the brain of the song, and then there's all the voices that receive the information from the brain, but each voice has modulation or modification from the incoming signal. It can be probability, it can be pitch shifting, it can be a delay in the notes, or it can be like slight randomization. So all the notes are coming from the same core, but they're slightly always changing. And it's like my job as a composer or a performer when I do that is to slightly change some parameters in each voices. Can be like the length of the notes, can be the delay, frequency, like, making it duller or opening. And sometimes like the simplest idea is very hypnotizing, like you said, more than if it's something really complicated, because then you reduce the number of people that will really get it and really be into that to a very small amount of people. You kind of want to leave it open so you can reach more people.
that's a really cool idea. I like that. Yeah. This kind of like top down thing. I feel like,
Brain. Yeah.
that's inspiring me to try more of that. I think I've kind of like tapped into that a lot in this ambient album I did, where the one MIDI clip for the main synth I would actually end up having as an input to a lot of the other layers as well, to be triggering maybe the percussion or whatever, so that even though things are have probability to them, they're still like, I don't know, a kick and a bass happening at the same time or whatever it may be. But I like, I don't know, it's making me want to experiment with that on a bigger level. Actually, I'm kind of, I don't know, I'm having this idea of like, maybe you've done this, but the main clip that everything is coming from, the main brain idea, you don't hear it anywhere. So that part is muted, but all you're hearing is all the stuff that it's feeding.
Yeah. So yeah, the brain is a MIDI. It's like a ghost MIDI channel, and the voices are all other MIDI channels with, like, I don't know, operator and cipher or omnisphere, and they all receive the information and then just change it.
That's pretty cool.
It's fun. It's like, if you listen to any song, well, not any song, but a lot of song, it's always like the same idea, and all of the voices are interpreting that idea in different ways. Can be a higher pitch, lower pitch. I mean, it came to me like, okay, so we'll just kind of make a main idea. And the beauty with Live 11 is that you can play with the probability as well, which makes it super fun. really, really
Man,
fun to
yeah.
play.
That's one of my favorite new features.
Yes. So
Thanks
I
so much.
see we're coming to an end. So thank you so much for accepting my invitation. And we will do this again. To end this podcast, we will be streaming a few snippets from your album. And by the way, thank you so much for doing the video editing of all the work that you've done for me. People don't know, but you also did all the tutorials that we made. You were the one behind. And so I think we're a great team, and it's such a pleasure working with you. So I wanted to thank you.
It's my pleasure, man. Thanks. You've given me a lot in return, man. So
That's great to hear.
Especially in the mastering realm. Masters
Great.
of fire.
I'm happy to hear that. So thanks again, and we stay in touch.
Sounds good, buddy.
Bye.